So just to preface, normally the recipes that I share are recipes that I have made multiple times, or at least I have researched and sort of tweaked, and I would consider them like well done recipes. I have made them multiple times, so I know what's going on. This recipe was something that I sort of just threw together. I did sort of take concepts from different desserts that I make all the time, so I did sort of know what was going on, even though it might not seem like it. So that is why this video might be a little crazy. I don't know. So anyways, enjoy. Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming or for coming back. Today I'm going to show you how to make a chilled chocolate pecan tart. So all the ingredients and measurements are listed down below, and we can start baking. Graham cracker crust for our tart. So you're just going to go ahead and mix together your chocolate graham cracker crumbs as well as some powdered sugar and a nice little pinch of salt. Go ahead and give that just a mix together with a fork or a whisk or whatever you have, and then you're going to go ahead and add in your melted butter. Go ahead and give this a mix until it looks like it is all nicely combined. It won't really come together, it'll be quite a loose mixture, but that is exactly what we are looking for. Now at this point you're going to go ahead and put it out into your pan or pans. Now I picked up these really cute little tiny tart pans just a little while back. It was sort of an impulse buy, but if you don't have little tiny tart pans like this, then that is not a problem. You can go ahead and use a regular pie shell, or you can use a fluted tart pan with the removable bottom, or if you have a rectangle or a square or any sort of shape, it doesn't really matter. I was just using these little tart pans because this is what I had and I thought they would be really, really cute. So you're going to go ahead and divide this out into your pan or pans, and then you're going to press it up these sides and around the bottom. Now I was planning on serving this in my little pans, so I wasn't too precise with this. Maybe if you're making a large one and you want to eventually take it out of the pan, then definitely make sure that you cover the sides nicely. And I will also say that I have adjusted the recipe to fit like a more standard 9-inch pie pan or tart pan, so you don't have to worry about sort of altering this, because I definitely didn't make enough crust to fill a full tart pan here. So go ahead and press this out into the sides, and then they're going to go into the oven. Now again, if you're doing a large tart shell, then I would suggest lining this with parchment paper and filling it with some baking beans or some rice so that it doesn't completely fall into the bottom. But again, these were just little ones. I was going to serve it in the shell, so I wasn't worried about this. So I just went ahead and threw it in the oven at 400 degrees, and you're just going to leave that in for 5 to 10 minutes. There's nothing raw in this crust, so it doesn't really have to bake. You're just trying to get it to sort of come together and form a crust-like shell for your tarts. Once they have baked, you can go ahead and take those out and just leave them to cool, and we can move on to our next step. Now, the next thing we are going to work on is our nice little caramelized pecans that we are going to put on top of our tart. Now, first of all, if you are a toasted pecan person, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but go ahead and toast your pecans to start. I really personally like the flavor and the texture of an untoasted pecan, so I did not toast mine, but if you want, you can go ahead and put your pecans on a tray in the oven at 400 degrees for about 5 minutes or until they start to smell nice and toasty, and then move on with this. But I just went with completely raw pecans because again, I like the taste and I like the texture, and I was making these tarts mostly for me. So now we are going to make our caramel that is just purely made of sugar. So you're going to go ahead and take a pot and you're going to add about a tablespoon of sugar, and then you're going to turn it on to about a medium heat, and you're just going to sort of watch that. This is going to go really slow at first. You're just going to sit there and watch. Don't walk away because you can burn the sugar really easily, but the sugar will very slowly start to melt. Once it has started, it will go a little bit faster, but once your tablespoon or so of sugar has melted, you can add a little bit more sugar. You're going to wait for that to melt, and then you're just going to keep adding sugar really slowly. Just as soon as it has melted, you can add more, and then once you have added all of your sugar, you're going to let it all melt, and then we are going to let it caramelize. So it will start out as a really light brown, but it will slowly darken to a nice deep brown color. Now we don't need a thermometer for this, we're just going to go by eye. We are looking for a nice deep brown caramel color. This is a very small quantity of sugar, so you might want to take it off a few seconds before you think it's done. And once you think it is ready to go, you're going to go ahead and take it off the heat, and you're going to add your nuts all at once and stir them in. Now, I didn't brown my sugar quite enough for my taste, so after this I put it back on the heat for a few seconds, but if you're caramelized nicely then you don't have to do this part, but I just stirred it in the heat for a few more seconds. Now, once your nuts are all covered in your caramel, you are going to promptly drop your camera and then very hastily put it back up before spreading your nuts out onto a pan. Here I have it on a silpat, but parchment is just fine if you do not have a silicone baking mat. And then you're just going to go ahead and set those aside and leave them to cool, and we can move on to the next step. Now, this filling was really just sort of make it up as you go along and spontaneous. I was just sort of throwing things together. I would say that it is somewhere between a no-bake cheesecake and a mousse sort of filling. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to start by whipping up some cream, just straight cream. Again, I like to measure it in a measuring cup like this with the nice tall sides because I think it really helps to keep cream from going absolutely everywhere. So just go ahead and mix that with a mixer or by hand if you're feeling ambitious until it is nice stiff peaks. You know you have stiff peaks when you can turn the measuring bowl or cup or bowl or whatever upside down and nothing falls out. Now you can go ahead and set that aside, and we are going to move on to our cream cheese. Now I went ahead and softened this in the microwave. You want it to be really nice and soft but not hot. So if it gets too hot, you can go ahead and leave it to cool down for a few minutes before you move on to this step. But we're just going to go ahead and give this a nice beat with the same mixer. You don't have to bother washing the beaters, honestly. Just go ahead and mix that together until it is nice and you are sure that there are no lumps or bumps. I can't talk today. Go ahead and mix that until it is nice and combined and there are no clumps or lumps in there. Next, we are going to add some powdered sugar, a nice generous pinch of salt, and a splash of vanilla, and we're going to beat this once more until combined. Now, setting aside the mixer, you're just going to go ahead and mix in some melted chocolate. I just melted this in the microwave, no need to be fancy about it, and it is not hot anymore. It is maybe a little bit warm, but just go ahead and add that in and then mix it all together. Now, once that is all mixed, we are going to add our cream into our cream cheese mixture. So when I'm adding cream, I like to add it about a third at a time and then mix it until it is almost combined before adding my next third. After I added my final third of whipped cream, I went ahead and mixed that until combined. And like I said, this was really a throw whatever I have in the kitchen into the bowl to make a filling sort of thing. So I went ahead and tasted it to make sure that I liked the way it tasted. I decided that I wanted to add a nice, generous little extra pinch of salt, as well as a little more vanilla. And optionally, you can add a little bit of an alcohol. I used some coffee liqueur here. I thought it just added to the flavor a little bit. It wasn't so much that it really tastes like alcohol, it just sort of adds a little something to the filling flavor. Then you can go ahead and mix that until combined, and then we are going to get ready to add that into our tarts. Now, at this point my tarts were nice and cooled, so I was ready to go. If they have not cooled, then you can just put your filling into the fridge for a little while your tarts cool down the rest of the way. Now, I added this into a piping bag to pipe it into my shells. I have a nice little star tip on it, but you don't have to be fancy. You can just spoon it in or use a portion scoop or really whatever you have. It does not have to be pretty. We can always add other things to make it look pretty. Do not worry. So I went ahead and added it into my piping bag and then just piped some cute little rosette type shapes. and then I went ahead and threw them into the fridge. We are going to let them chill for about an hour before we are ready to do the final bit of decoration and serving. Now, just before serving, the one thing I did was chop up my pecans. These cooled nicely. They had a nice hard caramel all around them and they were beautiful. By the way, even if you don't want to make tarts like this, if you just use this method to make pecans, then you can go ahead and make a really nice pecan brittle. Even substitute out the pecans, use any sort of nuts, and it makes a really, really tasty and really simple brittle. So anyways, I went ahead and I took my pecans and I gave them a rough chop. I wanted some medium-sized pieces. It really doesn't have to be exact. You can leave them whole if you want, or you can chop them down really, really tiny. It is up to you. And then I set those aside to get ready to decorate. Now, once all my tarts were nice and cooled and the filling was nice and cool and ready to go, we can start decorating. Now, I started with a little bit of whipped cream. I just added some powdered sugar and some vanilla to this to make it nice and tasty. And I put it in a piping bag with a star tip. And I added a smaller rosette on top of my filling to sort of mimic the original rosette. And then I decided to shave some chocolate on top. This is just a really simple semi-sweet baker's chocolate. I just used a vegetable peeler to get some nice little curls. And finally, we're just going to add our caramelized pecans to our tart. I just went ahead and put these in the corner. Now I will say that you don't want to put the pecans on until you are ready to serve your tart, because if these pecans go back in the fridge, then they'll start to sort of weep a little bit and the caramel will sort of bleed off and get all runny, and you don't really want that. You want to keep the caramel nice and crisp to add a little bit of texture to your tart. And now for the taste test. I was very excited because, again, this is the first time that I've ever made these because I just made up the recipe, honestly, and I am happy to report that they were very, very tasty. I also put a few in the freezer as just a little bit of an experiment, and those were amazing as well. I think they were just a little bit too solid in the freezer, but I do think that if you have a small tart like this, or if you want to make a big tart and make it ahead of time, then you could definitely store it in the freezer. And I would suggest just letting it thaw out for an hour before you serve it. And then it's perfect and you could have a really awesome make-ahead tart. Anyways, these were really tasty. I'm really happy that they turned out well because, again, I made up the recipe. I've said that so many times. So, I hope you make this, I hope you enjoy, and I will see you next time.